during the video meeting, it was shown that some criteria still has not been met, especially with regards to the views of those opposed consolidation and an adequate survey or community support. At the video meeting, the show from public support was a 2020 Insight Facebook survey administered by a third party, which showed that 54% of those responded were for consolidation and 38% were opposed. But from those overall figures, the county showed 60% for, 32% against. The city was 38 were for, 55% were against. The county population is around 14,910, and the city population is around 5,460. That's over 20,000 people, and only if you even counted adults. The 2020 Insight only polled 100 people, thus leaving out a large number of the citizens. You know, first question, was that poll publicly announced? In other words, was it announced to the community that we were going to do a poll and could get on and do this survey?
The committee, the Joint School Services Committee discussed the commissioning of the poll. So, I mean, to that regard, I mean, it was never private, it was never secret.
But did you announce it through newspaper, anything, that there was going to be a poll?
No.
No. Okay.
But there was a select where there was a certain number of respondents that the polling company was looking for. So to be quite honest with you, Mr. Dressler, I don't know what the polling industry standard is for a sample size for a given population. For a population of 20,000 or around 20,000 people, I can't answer for you. I'm not a pollster. So well, if you take issue with the number of people that were selected there, I mean, that's a fair question, it's a fair position to take, but it's not one that any of us on the Joint School Services Committee dove deeply into, because again, we were contracting out for a polling company to conduct that survey. So okay. It wasn't anything that we did ourselves.
Let me move forward a little bit with that. You know, why was it presented as a Virginia survey, not a local issue survey, and with no headline or title that had identified it as a consolidation survey? In fact, it appeared just to be a political ad just on the surface. And why did they only take 100? I mean, they took 100. Now, if you go back and you look at my figures, let's say 15,000 residents county, 5,000 city of Covington, 75 from the county were polled on that poll, and only 25 from city, 100 people. So, and that breaks it down, 3/4 and 1/4 of what the population would be. But once again, you know, only 100 people represented 20,000. I mean, do you think 100 people fairly represent 20,000 people?
That survey breakdown is roughly what I experienced, because...
But I'm asking you, do you think it fairly represents?
I think it very much accurately represented.
Because I didn't get to take it. I didn't get to vote.
I didn't either.
So, I mean, you represented the school board, you represented the community, you got your vote. The Board of Supervisors, City Council, they got the vote because they said they represented the community. But when it came to the population, I didn't get the vote. She may not get the vote. She may not get. Why do we not get the vote? I have a right to vote. I deserve the right. Is the committee afraid of a population vote?
No, the law doesn't call for that, and there's no pathway to just have a referendum. Right? There's no legal requirement.
No legal requirement, but would the committee ever consider that?
I don't know why we would. I'll be honest with you. We would be going back to.
Are you afraid it would be a no as far as support?
Yeah.
Then why not do it? So I get my chance to vote and everybody else gets their chance to vote. You have time to do it.
Because the law lays out in 22.1-25, the law is clear as to the pathway for two school divisions to merge into one. We followed the exact same pathway as Clifton Forge and Allegheny did. During that merger, there was a push for all this needs to be this needs to be a referendum. Mr. Dressler, I cannot answer why the General Assembly in probably the late 60s, that would have been the latest, may have been before that, why they said for a government consolidation, you're exactly correct, a referendum is required. For some reason, The good folks in Richmond decided that for a school consolidation, a referendum is not required, and I cannot answer to you why that is.
I mean, in my opinion, it was not fairly represented. And here's another thing I do not think was represented, and I'd like your opinion on this. Do you think the poll was fairly represented ethnically? Yes, so out of 100 people polled, 96 were white, 2 Hispanic, 1 American Indian, and 1 black African American. Do you think it was ethnically fair?
If you go on those statistics, no, it wasn't.
No.
I mean, that's if you just present those numbers, there's nobody that could say that
Right.
was appropriate.
And that's why I'm getting at as far as
given the
being opposed.
demographics.
And here's the thing, was there more than 100 people that took it, but they only took 100? Maybe, did 300 people take it, did 500 take it? We don't know this.
If I remember, there was a lot of talk that people were unable to get into it after a certain time, if I remember right. They were looking for the link, and once they found it, it was closed. And there was a lot of outcry that people didn't have an opportunity to do it. So I understand what you're saying. And the same thing about the populations, the vote, if we took one from the general population. There is a lot of people that feel the same way you do, that the general populace would vote no, of registered voters or whatever. So I understand that, and a lot of people that come to talk to us, you do have more people that are outspoken against it than typically come to us and say, we support it, thank you for your decision. And we do have those. But a lot of people that are against the idea are the ones that come.
I know that once the poll did come out in a previous conversation with the mayor of Covington, he agreed to me that a fair representation would be allowed to public the vote. But he also, on the flip side, stated that he was elected to represent the public. So, and once again, he got the right to administer his vote. City council, school board, all got the right to administer their vote. But thousands of us out there did not, and I think it is. And if the Virginia Department of Education was to see this video or get the word back to them, I think we are unfairly represented as far as when it comes to the numbers. That's according to this poll to the population, and then the so-called phone poll that never happened. Moving on. Let's see here. The VDOE was told by the committee lawyer, I think his name is Stephen Peatgrass, that there have been over 50 public hearings. Have we really had 50 public hearings? Now, you may have had 50 joint committee meetings, but there hasn't been 50 public hearings. We've had 3 in the city and 1 where the public had to submit questions early and could not speak. In addition, you told the Board of Supervisors they were not required to hold a hearing, combining the public hearings with other governing bodies, and eliminated 2 opportunities for the public to speak. So, when facts are given to the Virginia Department of Education, they need to be accurate, correct, because in most, well, not most, all the joint committee meetings, public comment was not allowed. So, once again, there were 3 public hearings, but 2 only people really got to get up and speak.
I think you might have that backwards, because I don't think Mr. Peatgrass said we had 50 public hearings. I think he said public meetings.
50.
And that's an important distinction, because a meeting and a hearing
are 2 different. I agree.
But he said in those 50 meetings there were plenty of opportunities for people to speak, and that is inaccurate.
That is inaccurate.
That was an inaccurate statement. Out of those 50 meetings, how many times were public comment allowed?
All right, moving on. In order to get students to buy into this merger, and it can happen, buildings need to be renovated completely. No blue and gold, no blue and red. The current estimate just to renovate CHS athletic facilities, we're talking gym, weight room, Booty Albert Stadium, and making things feasible for the new high school could cost as much, and this is estimated, and we have figures, could cost as much as $1.2 million. This does not include the changing of the rest of the Covington High School building, all of Allegheny High School, and changing the buildings and the names at Clifton Middle or Judah Watson. Where is this money going to come from?
It's an excellent question. Some of those transitional costs, I think Ms. Hale was involved in helping the Finance Committee and the Athletic Committee, and then in turn the Finance Committee get our arms around. Most specifically, uniforms, jerseys, anything that accompanies a student athlete on their, into their venue of competition, be that debate team, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be athletics. We have parsed out some of the other expenses. You were talking about gym floors and things. I think it's preferable if every single color of everything that the new division had is exactly correct on day one. But I think you can understand that's not necessarily something that has to be done day one. If the consolidated division, if we got some wild estimate that changing the floor at the new high school was going to cost some exorbitant amount of money, we can still play a basketball game there if the colors aren't exactly correct. Some of that money that you talked about, that estimated, and I'd like to see where some of that was estimated at. Some of that can be phased in over time, making that way easier on a budget.
So
it's not as if
the board of supervisors and city council will allot money to make those upgrades.
if you're talking about over time, that's much more palatable than you coming in or us coming in and saying we need $1.2 million today. Because if the school colors don't match exactly on day one of the new division, it's all for naught.
And then when it comes budget time, and you hand that over in the budget, and then they slide back over the paper and they say, make more cuts, we can't have it.
Forecasting just a touch, I would like to believe that the new division's finance department, the new division superintendent, the new division school board would all be on the same page that there may be some of those lingering legacy costs, if you want to call it that, from consolidation that need to be tidied up and taken care of over time.
But once again, you have a budget, but where will the money come from? How is the county and the city going to provide that money? Are they going to have to raise taxes?
It depends on what it is. If you're talking about a capital expense, something to be done with a physical piece of real estate, then a capital fund, that part of the budget is where you would most likely get that from.
All right, moving on. Just got a couple more here. You were asked by Dr. Pam Vault why people were against consolidation. You stated mostly because of loss of identity. Now, here is where I got a little upset in this meeting. To you and the consideration, your definition of loss of identity was people, losing their school colors, athletics, yada, yada, yada. Apparently, you did not listen to the teachers during this whole process. We argued that losing our students through the cracks with no opportunity to participate in sports, which allows us as teachers to keep grasp on them, to use that sport to keep them to come to school. Now, I know that there are committee members that think, hey, we have a larger school, kids will get better because of competition, but there will be no competition if they don't go out. I'm on the inside looking out. You're on the outside looking in. Ms. Hunter's been in the building, seen students, talked to teachers. She's been on the inside looking out. Mr. Baker's been on the inside looking out. I don't know if Ms. Preston, I maybe seen her in the building once. I haven't never seen Ms. Jones in the building. But it's a lot different when you're on the outside looking in as on the inside looking out. Now, we are, believe it or not, Covington City School is an inner city school. I mean, with the economics and we talk about the lunch as far as decreased and free lunches. I mean, we are an inner city school. We need athletics. If there is a combined school, the identity is they're going to lose that. We here, for our kid here, I can name 10 right now. With basketball coming up, we're dangling that carrot in front of them. If it wasn't for them to have the opportunity to play basketball, coming to school, keeping up the grades would not be an option. Now, those 10 kids, maybe, if there was a school combined, maybe five would make the combined team. Maybe those 5 might set the bench. But if they know they're going to set the bench, they're not going to go out. See, most of our kids walk to school. We have quite a few that walk to school, and that's their together time, and then they walk home. We have coaches, and a lot of our kids work either after school or right after practice, and they work because they have to help their families out. I had, over the years that I coached in my 17-year span, I had kids say, Coach, I got to be at work at 5:30. Can I get out of practice early? I understood the kid's home life situation. Yes, you take that. We're able to work with those kids. If that building moves there, those high school kids, those kids are not going to go out. You know, it's just going to drop. We're going to lose those kids through there. That's the identity we've been talking about since day one. You know, we're not worried. When this whole thing started, it was about better education. It was all about the students. And then once the door slammed and the vote went through, then the word came out, no, it was about the money. Well, if it was about the money from the get-go, then just say it. You know, then it's already come out, you know, it's about better athletics from some of the committee members. You know, keep in mind, it is about the kids. If we're going to do this merger, it needs to be done right day one. And excuse me for saying this, we don't need to half-ass it. Everything should be set in place, have a brand new school, the mascot, the colors, everything, day one. Now, is that feasible? Like you talk, possibly not, but it needs to be bestly done to do that. You've got to get them to buy into it. But your dropout rate, it's going to increase because you're going to lose the kids here. We keep that carrot in front of them. I mean, in all honesty, you know, not to just put you on the spot, but when's the last time you walked the halls of Covington High School or been to a ball game?
Not that long, Jim.
Not that, couple months. Have you even read the course of study that we provide our kids?
Not reasonable.
Okay. Last question, and I want you to answer this honestly.
Okay.
Do you think that the committee has manipulated any of these processes to push this merger through?
You can ask me if I beat my wife too. That would be. No.
Do you?
No, I don't, Mr. Dressler. I don't, and I think that maybe forms some of the foundation as to why when you ask that question, I think you actually want me to take you seriously when you ask that question. It's hard for me to take that question seriously. It really is. There has not been anything going on, and I've heard some of the conspiracy theories, I've heard all sorts of things. None of that has happened, except in some people's imaginations. Do you have an example of something you feel that was manipulated?
I think the poll was manipulated. I mean, a lot of us since day one wanted a public representation and a vote.
I would disagree with you on that, and here's why. Because I didn't present myself as for or against, unlike some people, and I would say you were very clearly against. How many people do you think that actually supported either the idea broadly or the plan that we had specifically were going to come up to you and engage in dialogue and say, hey Steve, I'd like to talk to you, here's why, I want to pick your brain about this, I want to see if you've thought about it this way. How many people genuinely did that with you?
I had nobody pick my brain.
Exactly.
And I think they probably should have.
Well, I sought those people. And as a matter of fact, I found myself in a position to where I was asking people, educationally connected people, and even just people that I would talk to. The breakdown, I didn't write it down, I didn't take my own poll, but what I found was that there was a mix of people that were for and against. And so when the poll came out and showed that there were people in opposition, that didn't surprise me. I knew those people existed. But if you take a look at what 22.1-25 requires us to do, it does not say that you need to show the absence of public opposition. It says you must show the evidence of public support, local support. So that poll shows that there is public support present in Covington and Allegheny County. Now, would people that voted for it, would we have liked to have seen 95 or 100% in approval? Sure, but that was a pipe dream that was never going to happen. And I think anybody that actually sat down and thought about it, if you spent the time talking with people, trying to gain as much perspective as you could, because one of the things I wanted to know all along, especially to the people who were very passionately against, is why. And what I kept getting a lot of times was, well, when I graduated in 1955, or when I was there in the mid-70s, everything was great. Or in some cases, we had folks say, well, maybe they would bring up something like you did, which is that I fear that not enough kids will be able to join an athletic team and they'll have people slip through the cracks. Steve, there were kids that slipped through the cracks when I was there 20 years ago. There were friends of mine that I watched go into a pathway that I would not have chosen for them, and we had a small school then.
And it's going to increase.
Well, we're always going to have children slip through the cracks, unfortunately. As much as I would like to come up with some way to keep that from happening, it is impossible. And so, to the degree that we can mitigate that in a consolidated school division, I'd like to do that, whatever that means. But I don't believe the consolidation debate, we can talk about what the impact to students would be, but for us to sit here and forecast and say, oh, it's going to be horrible, doom and gloom, we consolidate school divisions, we're going to have, can you hang a number on how many kids are going to slip through the cracks when we get to that point? It's impossible.
No.
It's impossible. It's a guess at best. So
if you were to ask me why I was so much against it, and if I had more facts and specifics, my mind would change. But if you ask, because right now there are no guarantees. And just like you say, until this new board is appointed, there are no guarantees. And with not having guarantees, it's kind of hard, predicting or knowing your future, not only as a teacher, but the future of the kids.
As Bert alluded to, well, the first thing I would submit is name a part in life where we do have guarantees. It's not there. However,
That's a guarantee.
Taxes.
death and taxes, right, fair enough. But as Bert alluded to earlier, the best that you're going to get by way of a guarantee is that there is a very high likelihood, both from the two governing bodies and the two existing school boards, that the people that are involved in it today, that have worked to craft this plan, are going to be very, very likely the vast majority of people that comprise the Board of Supervisors, City Council, and the Consolidated School Board. So we're not gonna, it's not gonna be a situation to where we've put this plan in place and then after it's done, we're all going away.
I hope not.
No,
I hope not,
because a lot of the same people that were involved with crafting this will be involved with implementing.
But